Today we begin the story of Napoleon's life. You are not yet the man history will come to fear, praise, condemn, and secretly admire. Right now, you're just a boy on a rocky island, walking the narrow, sun-struck alleys of Ajaccio, Corsica. The sea always smells like salt and revolution here. People yell in courtyards, dogs bark like they have opinions, and the market vendors argue over fish like it's international policy. But you don't join the noise. You listen. You notice things. You stare a second longer than most children would dare, and you file it all away. One fishmonger's hands shake when he lies. Another always touches his chin before he cheats someone on price. No one teaches you to notice this, it's just how your mind works. At home, it's not much quieter. Your mother, Letizia, is stern and silent in her own way. 8 children will do that to a woman, but she expects strength and obedience. Your father, Carlo, dreams of social climbing and speaks French even when no one wants him to. He's chasing status. You're chasing something else. You're just not sure what. Yet, you grow up Corsican, which means you grow up defiant. The French have taken your island, and they think themselves your betters. They even make you learn their language, a language you don't yet love. But you will. You'll weaponize it. Later, for now, your French is broken and accented. Your classmates in mainland France will mock you for it. You'll be called la paille au nez, the straw in the nose. You'll store the insult quietly, say nothing, and remember every syllable. They won't realize that they're helping you. Every slight builds the wall you'll soon stand on top of. You're a small, serious child. You like solitude more than you let on. You stare out the window at passing clouds and imagine them as fleets. The hills near your home? Fortresses. Your toy soldiers are lined with almost monastic precision. When one of your older brothers dares to rearrange them, you scowl but don't scold. You simply fix it the second he's gone. Silence is your first teacher. You listen to your parents' whispers about the French, about Paoli, about what Corsica might become. You don't join the debates, but they seep into your bones like island humidity. You're absorbing everything. At school, you are quiet but clever. You don't waste breath. While others shout to be seen, you sit in the back and let your eyes do the work. One of your teachers notices you're quiet. He doesn't like it. He calls it aloofness, arrogance. But he's not entirely wrong. You're learning that saying less can control more, especially when people start trying to guess what you're thinking. One day, a boy challenges you to a duel over a trivial insult. You accept without blinking. The swordplay isn't elegant, you're all gangly limbs and growing pains, but you don't speak a word the whole time. Your opponent panics halfway through. Something about your silent stare makes him back down. You win not by force but by presence. Your silence becomes your reputation. Adults start to think you're a little eerie. Some call you intense. Others call you brooding. You pretend not to notice, of course you notice, but you prefer them unsettled. The world around you is about to shatter. The French Revolution is on the horizon, a tidal wave already whispering from the mainland. Corsica is in turmoil. Your family will be forced to choose sides, and you'll find yourself tangled in politics, even as a teen. You won't yell in the streets like the others, but you'll make decisions that cut deeper than any shouted slogan. And when your father dies suddenly, your silence shifts. You don't cry. You write. Not poems, not eulogies, plans, thoughts, goals. Little seeds of strategy scribbled in the margins of your notebooks, between geometry problems and Latin translations. You're not mourning like they expect. You're preparing. You don't know it yet, but your silence is becoming magnetic. Others will start to listen when you don't speak. They'll fill the air with their own chatter, assuming your quiet equals weakness. They'll learn. Quirky detail. You once insisted on being weighed in gold coins rather than pounds. Just for fun. You were 9. The local banker hated it, and so, the boy with the quiet eyes walks steadily toward the storm of empire. You carry books more than blades, for now. You read Plutarch, Rousseau, Caesar. You prefer war in theory to war in motion. But you're already watching, measuring, waiting. Your island may be loud, but your future will be crafted in silence. You leave Corsica behind, but not entirely. It stays in your bones like sea air, briny, defiant, impossible to shake. Now you are a young cadet in the French military academy at Brienne, surrounded by snowdrifts and sneers. The language is strange in your mouth. The food tastes like boiled wood, and your accent is a punchline. The other boys laugh, especially the rich ones. They mock your clothes, your thin shoes, your stubborn silences. But you don't waste breath defending yourself. Why would you? That would mean lowering yourself to their level. You let them talk, and talk, and talk. All the while you write, furiously, obsessively. Your notebooks become your real voice. Maps, sketches, geometric puzzles, endless pages of troop movement theory. While they memorize names, you study patterns. While they argue about philosophy, you're quietly inventing war. You've realized something profound. Silence makes people underestimate you. They project their own assumptions into the gaps you leave. It's a trick you'll use for the rest of your life. You've started training in more than just swordsmanship and physics. You're mastering the art of strategic invisibility. And honestly, it's exhausting. Being invisible doesn't mean you're unfeeling. You miss home, Corsican chestnuts, your mother's stern affection, the warm chaos of your many siblings. Sometimes, when the wind howls through the stone corridors of the academy, it sounds like the Mediterranean calling to you through a bad flute. But instead of crying, you focus. You calculate. You grow sharper in the cold. One day, an officer throws a question to the class. What's the most decisive battle in Roman history? A dozen hands shoot up, eager voices spilling theories. You don't raise your hand. You wait until the officer turns to you directly. Only then do you answer, Pharsalus. And you explain why in quiet, precise language. The whole room goes silent. You've said only 50 words, but they carry the weight of 500. That's your power. You don't flood the room. You drain it, with silence and then one decisive sentence. Later that year, the other boys begin to copy your posture. Arms crossed, brow low, mouth shut. It doesn't work for them, of course. They look like sulking poultry. But you notice. You always notice. They're trying to imitate something they don't understand. That silence, when used correctly, isn't emptiness. It's a signal. And that signal is, I know something you don't. Another curious detail? You once refused to eat the academy's soup for 2 weeks straight. Not out of protest, but because you believed the blandness was an insult to your intellect. You claimed soup should stimulate the mind. No one argued. You read constantly. Tacitus, Voltaire, Machiavelli. You scribble essays about how kings fall and republics rot. You write about Corsica too, about how it could be free. You are 15 and your ideas are dangerous. You send your pamphlets home, hoping someone reads them, hoping someone understands. When you graduate, it's not with applause. The academy is relieved to be rid of you. You're brilliant, but you make people uncomfortable. Too intense, too quiet, too you. But you don't need their praise. You've already learned something more useful. When you step into a room and say nothing, people lean in. You're posted to a regiment at Valence. A junior artillery officer. Still barely a man. You're supposed to observe, obey, fade into the machinery of the French army. Instead, you study gunpowder ratios. You redesign siege drills. You correct your superiors calmly, accurately, until even the older officers start falling strangely silent around you. In your off time, you read more. Sometimes you wander the town, half lost in thought. You are silent, but your mind is shouting. One of the local women calls you the marble boy. Handsome, unreadable, unnerving. She says you look like a statue trying to remember how to breathe, and maybe you are. You're not ready to act. Not yet. But you're watching the storm clouds roll in. The revolution is underway. France is a bonfire of ideas and executions. The old world is burning, and you're standing quietly on the edge of it, holding a bucket of oil. You begin to write letters to your brothers, to ministers, to people in power. They're short but sharp. You've learned how to make words pierce without raising your voice. You've become fluent in the language of suggestion, implication, strategy. Your silence isn't emptiness. It's curation. You speak only when you've already won. There's an officer in your regiment who underestimates you, calls you Corsican shadow, laughs too loudly at his own jokes. One day during an exercise, you ask him to recheck the elevation on his artillery piece. He scoffs. Later, the cannon misfires. No one dies, but everyone notices. You don't say, "I told you so." You don't say anything. He never mocks you again. Still, you're frustrated. You see how slowly the wheels of power turn, how stupidity wears medals. You're growing hungry for action, for movement, for a battlefield of your own. But you wait, because silence is patience, and patience is power. The academy taught you mathematics. The revolution is about to teach you momentum. And when it all begins, when the streets of Paris run red and the thrones of Europe begin to tremble, it won't be the loud revolutionaries who last. It will be the quiet tactician with the plan. You stand at the edge of battle, not in the thick of it yet, not just now. Your boots sink slightly into the damp earth, and the gunpowder-laced air hums with tension. But your mouth? Closed. The men around you glance over, waiting for orders, watching your eyes instead of your lips. You've learned something crucial. Silence unnerves more than screaming ever could. In these early campaigns, Toulon, Italy, the scattered flames of revolution, your superiors underestimate you. At Toulon, you propose a plan to seize high ground the British forgot to guard. It's bold, surgical. You explain it quietly, no theatrics. A few raised eyebrows, but you get approval. When it succeeds, the silence becomes yours. No fanfare, just a promotion. From captain to brigadier general in a whisper. You're still young. 24. Your uniform is slightly too big, your reputation slightly too new. But your men obey you. Why? Because you don't yell. You look them in the eye, say only what must be said, and then nothing. And in that nothing, they feel something powerful. A calm, quiet confidence. You don't waste energy. You conserve it, deploy it. Like artillery, there's a moment, just before battle begins, when everything hushes. That breathless pause. It's your favorite. You walk the lines in that quiet, nodding slightly, letting your presence do what no speech could. Some generals ride horses. You walk. Some give long, rousing addresses. You say 3 words: steady, advance, fire, and they do. Because you mean it. During the Italian campaign, you put this into practice like never before. You command an army of hungry, underpaid, half-naked soldiers. Morale is somewhere between grim and fungal. But you don't lecture. You don't promise glory. You simply lead. Quietly, relentlessly. You appear where they don't expect you. At the front, marching beside them. In the dead of night, inspecting positions. In the early fog, coat buttoned tight, eyes narrowed like a man reading fate in the hills. You don't say much, and that makes your words matter. One sentence can lift an entire corps. You capture city after city with strategies written not in gunfire, but in gaps, in spaces the enemy forgot to fill. You study their silence too, their hesitation. One pause and you slip through. You surround, surprise, disorient. You don't always fire first. You let them make noise, Then answer with silence, precision, and steel. It becomes a pattern. The louder your enemies shout, the more silent you become. When Austrian generals send pompous ultimatums, you reply with a single sentence. Sometimes you don't reply at all. It drives them mad. They want noise. You give them quiet. And in that quiet, they second-guess, delay, falter. There's one story little known about a midnight council outside Mantua. Your officers argue over the next move. Tensions rise. Voices clash. You sit still for nearly 20 minutes, saying nothing. Then you stand, trace a line across the map, and say, "We go here." Before dawn, you leave the tent. No one speaks after that. They just move, because you've given them certainty, not through volume, but through weight. Even the enemy begins to fear it. Reports come back. Austrian scouts noting that your camps are too quiet, that your army moves like smoke, that your generals rarely speak above a whisper. Rumors bloom like mold in a damp trench. Some say you have spies everywhere. Some say you read minds. One claims you move through walls. You don't correct them. You're building a reputation not just for brilliance, but for stillness, for the way you enter a room and compress it, for how you stare silent until others rush to fill the void. You discover that silence isn't just unsettling. It's revealing. People tell you everything if you wait long enough. Even enemies, especially them, quirky detail time. During a particularly muddy campaign, you once wore the same socks for 10 straight days, convinced they were lucky. When someone finally dared mention the smell, you told them, "Victory doesn't care how you smell." But behind the silence, there's noise. Inside your head, maps, math, troop counts, bridge load limits, grain calculations. You've trained yourself to listen so carefully that you can hear doubt before it speaks. You can smell hesitation. You treat every campaign like a chessboard with cannons, and you're winning, over and over, battle after battle, not with sheer force, but with frictionless confidence, with quiet, deliberate aggression. You've learned that a general who hesitates before speaking often moves without hesitation on the field. You don't seek applause. You don't write memoirs yet. You don't have a court or a crown or a throne. What you have is silence, and it's louder than ever. Your enemies hate it. It echoes in their tents at night. They can't predict you. They can't read you. And worst of all, they can't stop you. You return to Paris a hero, though no one quite says it. Not at first. The city buzzes like a disturbed beehive, full of arguments, pamphlets, and cafes where everyone's a philosopher after 2 glasses of wine. You walk its streets quietly, wrapped in a modest coat, ducking fanfare and observing everything. Your silence feels almost dangerous here. It cuts through the noise like a saber. You don't speak in salons unless cornered. When you do, it's brief. A single sentence that silences a room. You're not rude, you're efficient. Let the others debate over Rousseau and the rights of man. You're planning how to move troops through the Alps in winter. France is in chaos. The Directory rules in name only. Corruption oozes from every ministry. Everyone's talking, no one's acting. It's a symphony of indecision, and you find it exhausting. So you do what you always do, you listen. You wait. You walk the long corridors of the Tuileries with your hands behind your back and your thoughts ahead of your time. And then Egypt calls. They offer you command of a campaign so absurd it sounds like a joke. Invade a land of sand, sun, and ancient mystery, with the goal of destabilizing British trade routes. It's illogical, impractical, grandiose. Naturally, you say yes. Your voyage to Egypt is not quiet. The Mediterranean churns. The soldiers sing bawdy songs. The ships groan like old men in the wind. But you're in your cabin, reading about Alexander the Great and scribbling observations about pyramids and port cities. The heat hasn't even begun, and already you're mapping conquest on your dinner napkin. You land at Alexandria with a bang, literally. Cannons thunder, French boots stomp into the sands. But the real war is yet to come, and it's not against the Mamluks. It's against the silence of the desert. Egypt is a land of dust and echoes. You're a creature of order, geometry, angles, and here everything blurs. The sun flattens depth. The heat eats sound. Yet somehow this land suits you. You speak less here. The desert approves. Your army marches to Cairo like a mirage with bayonets. Along the way, you fight the battle of the pyramids, not just a battle, but a moment. You stand before your men, the pyramids looming behind you like sleeping giants, and you say, "From the heights of these pyramids, 40 centuries look down upon you." It's one of your longest speeches. 40 centuries in 7 words. Efficient, epic, unforgettable. You win. Of course you win. But Egypt does not give itself over easily. The people revolt. Disease spreads. You try to rule through science and sanitation, but the land remains stubborn, unpredictable. You try printing presses and proclamations. You study Islam. You even consider converting, just for influence. You never do, but you let the rumor breathe. It helps, and then you find something that feels eternal. Not a battlefield, not a treaty, a stone, the Rosetta Stone. You don't realize its full importance, not yet, but it whispers to you. A riddle, a locked door, the idea that language, like silence, can carry power across centuries. You're intrigued. You order it studied. Quietly, of course. And then the British arrive. Nelson crushes your fleet at Abu Qir Bay. Your ships burn. Your path home disappears in smoke. The silence this time is heavier. Your men look to you, scared, stranded. You say nothing. For 3 days, you ride alone in the desert. You visit the sick. You draft letters that will never be sent. And then, just when despair sets in, you move again. You keep them marching. Not with promises, with presence. You survive. But Egypt, in the end, defeats you not with battle, but with vastness. The land is too big, the culture too deep, the logistics too maddening. You don't say that, of course. You just leave, quietly. You slip back to France like a ghost. No fanfare, no trumpets. You land at Frejus with a small group and ride straight to Paris. The streets still buzz. The salons still bicker. But the directory? Weak, stumbling. France is a table with too many chairs. You wait as always. You listen. You meet Talleyrand, cold-eyed, clever, oily, and say little. He talks. A lot. You let him, and then, with barely a shout, you stage a coup. The 18th Brumaire. A day that feels like thunder in a whisper. You march into the legislature. They heckle you. You say almost nothing. Your brother screams for silence. The guards remove the opposition. You emerge as first consul. Just like that. No guillotine. No bloody revolution. No chaos. Just a man walking through noise with silence in his pocket and power in his stare. Quirky detail? On the night after the coup, you slept with your boots on just in case. You now have what you've wanted, what you've circled like a hawk for years. Command. Not just of armies, but of France itself. And you didn't scream to get it. You just waited for everyone else to talk themselves out of the way. You are now the first consul of France. The power you hold feels heavy, but you wear it with the ease of a man who has been carrying it long before anyone noticed. Paris hums beneath your feet like a restless animal, full of hope, fear, and whispered rumors. You move through the corridors of power with the same calm you showed in the battlefield's shadow. Silent, deliberate, and always watching. You don't waste time with hollow speeches or grand declarations. Instead, you focus on rebuilding roads, schools, laws. You know a country isn't won by armies alone. It's won by the minds of its people. So you create the Napoleonic Code, a set of laws that promise order in a sea of chaos. The law isn't poetry, it's precision. You speak of equality, property, and justice with a voice as steady as the ticking of a clock. It isn't flashy, but it works. The people feel it, a new rhythm. Behind closed doors, you're a master chess player, moving bishops and knights with quiet cunning. You negotiate with Europe's monarchs, who sneer but cannot ignore you. Your silence becomes diplomacy's most powerful weapon. You listen to their threats, their bluster, and answer only when necessary. When you speak, your words are measured and calculated. Like a scalpel, cutting through lies and posturing. War still follows you like a shadow. You build the Grande Armée, a force unlike any Europe has seen. Your strategy is to strike fast, hard, and precise. You train your soldiers with the same discipline you expect of yourself. No chaos, no confusion, only the clean lines of movement and the sharp angles of attack. You are the quiet eye in the storm of battle. Your coronation as emperor is an exercise in subtle power. You crown yourself, not the Pope, sending a clear message. You answer to no one but yourself. The crowd gasps, but you don't smile. You never smile when making history. You know that power is not a game. It's a responsibility cloaked in silence. Behind the throne, you balance family and duty with careful control. Your relationship with Josephine is complicated, full of passion, power plays, and quiet betrayals. You love her fiercely but demand loyalty and strength. You write letters filled with both tenderness and orders. Your pen is sharp as your sword. Your mind is a constant engine. Even in moments of rest, you think about maps, alliances, and the next move. You enjoy chess, but life feels like a game where the stakes are always higher. Sometimes, when alone, you practice your handwriting, perfecting every letter as if it were a weapon. One odd habit: you love sweets but hide it. Your staff once found you sneaking pastries at midnight, quickly hiding the evidence behind your back. They call you the Sugar Emperor in secret. Your legacy grows not just from battles won, but from reforms enacted. You centralize education, build canals, and modernize France's economy. You understand that a country's strength isn't just in muskets and cannons, but in knowledge and infrastructure. You rule not by fear alone, but by the promise of order and progress. Your enemies watch you with growing concern. You've reshaped Europe's political landscape without raising your voice, simply by standing firm and moving quickly. You are a paradox, a man who commands thousands with a whisper and commands history with silence. Yet, beneath the armor of power, you remain aware of your limits. You keep close advisors, listen carefully, and avoid rash decisions. You know the world is unpredictable, and you prepare for storms, even if they come silently. The empire is yours to shape, but you know the future will not be quiet forever. Your Grande Armée stretches across Europe like a living machine, each part moving with precision and purpose. You are no longer just a man. You are a force of nature, silent but unstoppable. The continent watches you warily, unsure whether you will be a storm or a calm after the tempest. You prepare meticulously for the Ulm campaign. It's a masterpiece of strategy, where you outflank the Austrian army without a single major battle. The enemy wakes up one morning to find themselves surrounded, trapped in a cage you built with patience and silence. It's a victory not of brute force, but of brains, one that sends shockwaves through Europe. Your soldiers adore you not because you shout orders, but because you trust them. You walk among the ranks, nodding silently, acknowledging their sacrifice without grand speeches. You carry yourself with a quiet authority that inspires loyalty deeper than words ever could. The Battle of Austerlitz arrives like a thunderclap, yet your approach is calm, almost serene. You use the weather, the terrain, and the enemy's arrogance against them. You bait them with a feint, drawing them into a trap that collapses with devastating speed. When the smoke clears, you have achieved what many thought impossible: the defeat of the combined Russian and Austrian forces. This victory cements your reputation as a military genius. But you don't bask in glory. Instead, you send a single telegram to Paris: enemy defeated. No boasts, no celebrations, just facts. In the aftermath, you negotiate the Treaty of Pressburg, reshaping Europe's map with a surgeon's touch. You are ruthless but fair, rewarding allies and punishing foes with measured hands. You understand power is temporary unless backed by diplomacy and respect. Your leadership style confounds both friends and enemies. You speak little, but your presence fills every room. Ministers hang on your every word. Generals await your silent nod before advancing. You move like a shadow through history, unseen but everywhere. Back home, you continue to modernize France. You reform education, creating institutions to train future engineers, scientists, and officers. You understand that winning battles today means little if France can't compete tomorrow. But cracks begin to show. The continental system, your economic blockade against Britain, is ambitious but flawed. Smugglers, corrupt officials, and distant allies chip away at its effectiveness. Still, you persist, believing in the power of a united Europe under your rule. Your personal life remains a study in contrasts. You are affectionate but distant with your children. You expect discipline and excellence, but you are also known to indulge in quiet moments of laughter and storytelling. Your circle is small, your trust even smaller. There's an odd rumor in Paris that you have a secret garden where you grow rare herbs and flowers, tending them with the same care you give your empire. It's said that when the world becomes too loud, you retreat there to find peace. And peace is fleeting. The winds of war begin to stir again, as old alliances shift and new threats emerge. You prepare to face them as you always have, with silence that speaks louder than words and strategy sharper than any sword. The winds have shifted, and you feel it in your bones. Europe's alliances twist like a serpent ready to strike. Russia, once an uneasy friend, now eyes you with suspicion. The continental system, your grand economic blockade, is straining under pressure, cracks appearing like fractures in a frozen lake. You know the peace won at Austerlitz is fragile, like fine china balanced on a sharp blade. You prepare for war once more, this time against Austria again, and later against Prussia and Russia. The battles come in quick succession. Jena, Auerstedt, Friedland. You don't roar commands across the battlefield. You move silently among your men, a ghost of calm in the chaos of gunfire and cannon smoke. Your tactics evolve: lightning strikes, feints, envelopments. You use speed as your weapon, turning the battlefield into a chessboard where every piece moves with deadly precision. The enemy doesn't know where you'll strike next, only that when you do, it will be swift and decisive. Your victories are breathtaking. After Friedland, you force Russia to sign the Treaty of Tilsit, a rare moment of personal diplomacy conducted with few words but profound effect. You meet Tsar Alexander on a raft in the middle of the Neman River, a symbolic setting for the birth of a new alliance, or so it seems. The meeting is quiet, tense, a negotiation carried out through subtle glances and brief remarks. You sense the Tsar's respect but also his fear. You offer peace but only on your terms. At home, you continue to reshape France with relentless energy. Your reforms touch every corner of society, from the establishment of the Bank of France to the reorganization of the education system. You create the Legion of Honor to reward merit, not birthright, a subtle challenge to the old aristocracy. Yet, beneath your iron will, you reveal a surprising softness. You are a patron of the arts and sciences, encouraging discoveries and the spread of knowledge. You believe that culture and power walk hand in hand, that the future belongs to those who master both. But the personal sacrifices weigh on you. Your marriage to Josephine falters under the strain of your ambitions and her inability to provide an heir. You keep your feelings guarded, showing affection in brief, almost secret moments. An exchange of a glance, a whispered word in a crowded room. You are both lovers and rivals, tied by history and torn by duty. Quirky detail. Despite your stern public image, you have a fondness for chess and play obsessively during campaigns, sometimes with yourself, whispering moves aloud in Latin just to break the silence. As your empire expands, so does the list of enemies. Britain remains your nemesis, refusing to bow to your will. Your blockade weakens under their naval power, and your efforts to isolate them increasingly drain your resources. You begin to feel the weight of your empire's vastness, the challenges of governing diverse peoples and distant lands. The silent general who once conquered with whispered commands now faces the cacophony of rebellion and resistance. Still, you remain undeterred. You know that the next move must be bold. The stakes have never been higher. You plan the invasion of Russia with the cold calculation of a man who knows his limits but refuses to be bound by them. You gather your Grande Armée, the largest force Europe has ever seen, 100,000 men marching into the vast unknown. The air buzzes with anticipation, but you remain silent, observing, calculating, waiting for the right moment. The Russian winter looms, a beast waiting to pounce. You know the risks. Still, your confidence is unshaken. You remember Alexander's quiet smiles, the fragile peace of Tilsit. You tell yourself this will be different. You tell yourself the empire must expand or crumble. The march begins under a pale sun, the soldiers marching past endless forests and frozen rivers. You ride at the front, your eyes scanning the horizon like a hawk. You are calm, unreadable. Your silence unnerves even your closest generals. The Russians retreat, scorched earth behind them. Villages burned, supplies destroyed. You advance deeper into the wilderness, following a phantom enemy who refuses battle. You feel the hunger of the land, the cold seep into your bones. Your men's faces grow gaunt. Frostbite bites at their fingers. Supplies dwindle. At Smolensk, you take the city, but victory tastes hollow. The enemy slips away again, deeper into the winter's grip. Your commanders whisper doubts, but you say nothing. You do not panic. Instead, you plan, you wait, you hope. Then comes the Battle of Borodino, blood-soaked and brutal. You command with a silence that speaks volumes, issuing orders with sharp gestures and brief commands. The fighting is savage, the noise deafening. When it ends, the field is strewn with bodies, but you hold the ground. Moscow lies ahead, a prize and a trap. You enter the city to find it deserted, flames licking at the night sky. The great city burns, a silence filled with crackling fire and ash. You spend nights walking among the ruins, the ghost of your empire flickering in every ember. The cold tightens its grip. Supplies vanish. Morale plummets. You order a retreat, a desperate march back through the frozen wasteland. The army fragments, swallowed by snow and exhaustion. You ride forward alone at times, the weight of silence heavier than any cloak. Quirky detail. During the retreat, you famously used a custom-made thermometer strapped inside your coat to measure the biting cold. No one dared mention the irony. The retreat is a nightmare, a test of endurance, will, and leadership. You lose tens of thousands, but you do not lose the core of your army. You push forward with quiet resolve, the echo of your silence louder than any cannon. Back in Paris, the news arrives like a thunderclap. The emperor who conquered Europe now faces his greatest defeat. Yet you refuse to be broken. You use this silence to rebuild, to strategize, to plan your next move. Because for you, silence is not weakness, it is power. You return to Paris from the ashes of Russia, carrying the weight of defeat with the same quiet dignity that carried you through victories. The The city feels colder now, less vibrant, a reflection of the storm gathering beyond the walls. The empire you built trembles under pressure, yet you move forward with unshaken resolve. You know that power is a delicate dance. Allies question you, enemies circle like wolves sensing blood. The continental system falters, dissent simmers, and whispers grow louder. Your silence becomes a shield and a sword, cutting through rumors and challenges alike. Despite everything, you prepare for one last grand campaign, the War of the Sixth Coalition. Your army, though battered, remains a formidable force. You study maps with obsessive care, weighing every possible outcome. Every detail matters. Every silence speaks volumes. In battle, you remain the same, calm, inscrutable, a conductor of chaos who commands without raising his voice. The Battle of Leipzig, the Battle of Nations, tests your leadership like never before. The ground shakes with gunfire and the cries of tens of thousands. You fight fiercely, but the tide turns against you. When defeat comes, you retreat with the remnants of your forces, moving through a Europe that once trembled before you, now marching toward your downfall. You sense the end approaching, yet you maintain your composure. Even in exile, silence remains your companion. Your abdication is formal, almost anticlimactic. No grand speeches, no dramatic farewell. You sign the papers and step away, not with bitterness but with the quiet acceptance of a man who understands the impermanence of power. You are sent to Elba, a tiny island that feels like a gilded cage. Yet even here, your mind never stops. You walk the shores, planning, dreaming, waiting. The world may have cast you out, but your spirit remains unbroken. You speak little but think constantly. Quirky detail. On Elba, you once ordered the creation of a small theater to perform plays you wrote yourself. An unexpected hobby for the man who rewrote history with canons and laws. Your exile is brief. You escape, returning to France in a thunderous return known as the 100 Days. The people greet you not as a fallen emperor but as a symbol of resilience. You move silently through the crowds, sensing their hope, their fear. But history will not be so kind again. The Battle of Waterloo becomes your final stand, a clash where silence and strategy meet a storm of chaos. You command with the same quiet authority, but the world has changed. Your enemies have learned to listen, to anticipate. When defeat is final, you are sent to St. Helena, far from the continent you once ruled. The silence here is profound, vast oceans, endless skies. Yet even in exile, you remain a figure of power, a man whose legacy whispers through the corridors of time. You spend your final years reflecting, writing, and watching the horizon. Your story is one of contradiction. A man who conquered with cannons but was feared more for his silence. Your days on St. Helena stretch long and quiet, a world away from the roar of cannon and clamor of courts. The island's rugged cliffs and endless ocean remind you how far you have fallen, and yet, how far you have come. You walk the grounds alone, the wind carrying memories like distant echoes. You spend hours writing your memoirs, shaping the story you want history to tell. The pen in your hand moves with the same precision as your sword once did, crafting a legacy as deliberate as your campaigns. You reflect on victories and defeats, loves and losses, the silence that has always surrounded you like a cloak. Your health fades slowly. The harsh island air and relentless isolation test your spirit, but you endure with the stubbornness of a man who refused to be forgotten. Visitors come and go, curious about the fallen emperor who once shook the world. You speak sparingly, but when you do, your words carry the weight of experience and regret. One of the few quirks that remain is your fondness for chocolate, which you savor quietly, a small comfort against the cold and loneliness. Your attendants joke that even in exile you know how to treat yourself well. You think often of your soldiers, the millions who followed you in silence and battle. You wonder if they remember you not just as a conqueror, but as a man who demanded greatness and gave everything in return. Your legacy is complex, admired, feared, debated, but undeniably powerful. Your mind drifts to Josephine, to the family you built and left behind, to the Europe reshaped by your ambition and silence. You understand that history will never be simple, nor you. As your life's final chapter closes, you do not fear the silence that comes with death. You embrace it as you did all things, with quiet strength and unwavering resolve. Your story ends not with a shout but a whisper that will echo through time, inspiring those who understand that true power often lies not in noise, but in the spaces between.